welcome back. Welcome back. And if this is your first viewing or listening experience, I definitely want to welcome you for the first time. So what's up? What's up with you? What's good? What's really, really, really good? This is a question I like to ask at the start of every podcast. So much so, and I ask this question because I want to start having people push or having you to push from a place of, I've got this going on and this is happening. And if it's not one thing, it's another. To get out of that and realize, in fact, let me use this scripture. I can't remember a chapter and verse, but it speaks of how God gives new grace and new mercies fresh every day. So if God is giving new mercies and new grace every day, that means we should be looking at doing this day differently than we did yesterday, that we should be thinking about this day differently than we thought about yesterday. Don't think about the things that happened on yesterday as if they're going to happen again today, because what happened yesterday was for yesterday. He said new grace and new mercy. So therefore that means, you know what? You have an opportunity to change the narrative of what was. Follow? All right. This is the Act Accordingly Series podcast, and I am your host, Daniel J. Williams. And the purpose of this podcast is this. It's to show men not only how to identify, but more importantly, how to walk away from certain patterns and habits that keeps us living in cycles of frustration. Yep, I said us. Us. I said us because you know what? Life is going to be life from the time that we're born until the time that we leave. And no matter how much we plan, organize, be strategic and tactical, things are going to happen. But we don't have to panic and we don't have to get stuck in mistakes. Once we realize where the mistake is, once we realize where a problem is, we locate it, root it out, we can handle it, we can solve it, we can move forward. We don't have to stay in cycles of frustration. For real. Well, anyway, listen, I'm not going to prolong this. I know that you have things to do and I have things to do, and we have to get things done. So husbands, fathers, men, let's talk about three words. Let's talk about failure, embarrassment, and mistakes. The reason why I want to talk about failure, embarrassment, and mistakes is because, well, first, let me go to this. I know you've heard it. I've heard it quite often that, you know what, that the fear of failure is what keeps a lot of people from moving forward, or the fear of failure is what keeps people in a place of comfortable. But I like to go a little further with that. You ever thought about this? Maybe it's not so much the fear of failure, or maybe so much more as in the fear of embarrassment. The fear of embarrassment is what keeps us from trying a lot of things and going forward in a lot of things, because we don't like to be embarrassed. And what is embarrassed? First, let's look at this word, because the fear of failure, I'm going to look at failure. First, let's look at the word failure. So failure is a lack of success, or the inability to meet an expectation. Now, let's first talk about this. Let's get on this. How can you possibly have a lack of success in anything? If you try, that means you were at a place to where you didn't have any experience in a matter, right? And even if you move to a small area into that new place, that's a success. You've completed something that you hadn't completed before. That's a success. It doesn't matter if you didn't go all the way to where somebody else says, if you don't reach this point, it's not success. If you don't reach this point, it's not success. As long as you're moving the needle in the direction of progress, that's success. Stop beating yourself up on what somebody else defines as being success, because it's individual. There's no one set in stone destination that success is. It's individual. It's individual. And it also says the inability to meet an expectation. The only way you don't have an inability to meet an expectation is if you don't try. Trying is the ability to meet an expectation. If you didn't meet it, maybe it's only because you didn't have all of the information. You didn't have all of the steps to get there. Your information may have been limited, but you worked with what you had to work with. The only inability to meet an expectation is not trying. That's it. So that thing about failure, man, lose the word failure from your vocabulary, right? It goes back to saying, I'm gonna say it's not the fear of failure, but more the fear of embarrassment. Because listen, think about this. Back to when you were kids, we were conditioned to when we don't have the right answer, that we're supposed to be less than in some way. If you raise your hand and you have the wrong answer, everybody laughed at you. And then it puts you in a shell, and it's like, if I don't have the right answer, I'm not going to talk up. If I don't have the right answer, I'm not going to raise my hand. So we were conditioned to believe that not having the right answer all the time was somehow we were less than. It's not, it's far from the truth. Or perhaps not performing to the height of what somebody else has done. They say, oh, he did it here. You could have done it right here. And they would say that you still didn't do it like how he did it. That's still success, no matter where you did it. As long as you move the needle from, I've never done this, and I've done this, I've gotten this, I got this far in it. We like to diminish our efforts and say, I only did this, or I only got this far, but you move the needle. That's success. Stop letting others define what success is, and stop diminishing your value and diminishing your efforts and diminishing your works. You know what I'm saying? All right, now we define what failure is, what they say failure is, but what failure really is not. There's no way that you can be a failure. They should just remove that word because it doesn't exist, because there's no way that you can lack success unless you don't try. There's no way you can not have the ability to meet an expectation unless you don't try. Now let's look at this word embarrassment, right? So embarrassment is really, it's unwanted attention drawn to a personal mistake. It's unwanted attention drawn to a personal mistake, and usually when attention is drawn to the personal mistake, then what do we feel? We feel shamed. We're taught to feel shamed and to feel as though we're not the best at. We're not the best at something. We're not the best at something because we didn't do it the way that somebody else did it. Somebody else did it right here. So I mean, it's good to say that, okay, yeah, that's a line, that's a standard, that's a goal that I would like to reach, but you don't know the backstory on how they got to that level of their level of success. So you need to start saying it like that, to their level of success, not to that level of success, but to their level of success, because everybody's level of success depends on their background, for one. It's whether they grew up seeing success, seeing levels of success being reached all around them. But when success being around you, then you look at, that as being it, the level. While others say they have a higher expectation because they've seen higher expectations from people who are consistently looking to move from success to success, from success to success. Because remember, success isn't a destination. Success is more places where you get recognized for the efforts, for your efforts in going forward and continuing to go forward. That's what success really is. Success isn't a destination. It's a place of where you get recognition for the efforts of starting from here and ending up here. Let's keep talking about embarrassment. It's unwanted attention drawn to making a personal mistake. All right, so let's talk about this thing right here. If you don't make mistakes, how can you learn? If you don't make mistakes, how can you learn? You can't move forward if you don't make mistakes. Mistakes come with learning. So this is why I'm going, let's go talk about mistakes, right? Mistakes, definition of mistakes, I had to write this one down. Mistakes, to understand or perceive wrongly, to interpret or judge incorrectly. It says to understand or perceive wrongly, or to interpret or judge incorrectly. So, isn't making mistakes a part of learning? If making mistakes are a part of learning, and learning is this, learning is a process that leads to change. It's a process that leads to change. It changes where you are to where you are wanting to be. It's a process that leads to change. Learning is a process that leads to change. I keep reiterating that. So the change occurs as a result of an experience. Make a mistake, that's an experience. To increase the potential for improved performance. How do you improve your performance? Well, you have to know where you have fallen short in your performance, where you went about it the incorrect way, where you didn't have all of the information before, but now that you're more knowledgeable because you just created an experience because you tried it this way, it didn't work out that way. So now I've learned that doesn't work. So now I'm gonna have to adjust. I'm gonna have to move differently the next time I go at my attempt in going forward. Mistakes are a part of learning. It's a part of growth. It's how making mistakes is actually how you develop your gift. It's how you develop your talent. It's how you develop your aptitude for whatever it is that you have an aptitude for something, you're good at it, but in order to be your best at it, you have to continue repetitions. In some repetitions, you get it correct. In other repetitions, you don't get it as correct. So there has to be a learning and there has to be mistakes in order for you to grow. So in short, when I wrap this up is this. How do I want to say it? Listen, there's no such thing as failure. You can't have a lack of success or inability to meet an expectation unless you just don't try. That's not failure. That's just you not trying. And if you started and then in the middle of it, you decide that you want to quit, well, that's just quitting. That's not being a failure. That's just you quit. You stop putting in the effort to keep going forward. That's not a failure. That's you being a quitter. You're not a failure. You're a quitter. You can always change that. Just get back in and finish what you started. Keep working towards it. Keep getting better until you get to another success and then another success and then another success. Continue to move. It's not a fear of failure because failure isn't real. Failure is not real. It's something that has been made up to keep others in a place, of being more submissive to those who know better than to give in to fear, because it's more about embarrassment. It's embarrassment that keeps us from moving forward. It's embarrassment that keeps us from asking for help. It's embarrassment that keeps us from asking questions. It's embarrassment that keeps a lot of us men from moving forward. So husbands, fathers, men, forget that embarrassment thing, because embarrassment, you have to make mistakes, man. Mistakes are a part of learning. You didn't get 1 + 1 right the first time. You had to learn it. You didn't get the multiplication tables correct the first time. You had to learn it. You had to make mistakes. You had to put down the wrong answer. And then once you find you got tired of the wrong answer, and then you really got in and you learn the correct steps. You learn the correct steps to always get that correct answer, that appropriate answer every time. It's all about finding the appropriate steps, the appropriate information to go forward. There's no such thing as failure. And stop being embarrassment about a process that you have to go through in order for you to grow. If this had any value for you, I want you to send me an email. The number 2, actaccordingly@gmail.com. The number 2 at actaccordingly@gmail.com. And if you're not following me on my social media platforms, and why wouldn't you be following me on my social media platforms, I wonder? Well, anyway, here's how you can follow. On Facebook, you can find me at Daniel J. Williams. On Facebook, it's Daniel J. Williams. And on Instagram, it's 2 different accounts. You can find me at one account. That's the number 2, Act Accordingly. The number 2, Act Accordingly. And then there's a second account, the word 1, the number 2, the word triumph. 1 to triumph. ONE, the number 2, triumph. Hey, we got some things that's going to be coming up real soon. A private men's community. We're going to have some master classes that'll be coming up, courses that'll be available, a lot of stuff that's from the content of these podcasts. If you're interested, keep watching and share with another man. Stop being selfish. Stop getting good information and good knowledge and not sharing it with a brother that could use it. Got it? All right, man. Act accordingly.